Hello, chismosas y chismosos, and welcome back to another episode of Bay Area Housewife of True Crime. I'm Audrey, former paralegal, current stay-at-home mom, lifelong lover of true crime. I like to tell the stories of the real-life cucuys and lloronas of the world. The cases I cover are wild, topics may be triggering, viewer and listener discretion is advised. With all that being said, grab your hot Cheetos and let's dive into today's case. 18-year-old Rena Aguilar was violently murdered by a real-life cucuy on April 29, 1980 in her Ramona Street home in Pinole, California. Not only did this real-life monster take a mother from an 18-month-old child, but he took the life of a loving husband and amazing cop and father, 33-year-old Bernie Swartz. The story starts with a nosy Medici neighbor who ends up helping the authorities catch a killer. I guess if you're like me, and especially my husband, who loves to watch the happenings of what's going on in the neighborhood from our windows or now from our phones, when something exciting is happening, it can pay off in the long run. The great disadvantage that the people in the 80s and 90s had is an advantage today, which is technology. Ring and Nest doorbells have helped thousands of cases be solved today. However, in 1980, the cops had to rely on the word and descriptions of vigilante neighbors. It was the night of April 29, 1980 at 11 p.m. Witnesses see two men coming in and out of a neighbor's house through the side door and walk into a van parked on the sidewalk. She knew the house was occupied by two young women who, and I quote, often had male visitors, unquote. When I tell you that I rolled my eyes when I read this, I am serious. But yet again, sometimes being a vieja metiche has its perks. She hears a woman scream and calls the police. At 12:15 a.m., technically the next day of April 30th of 1980, the Pinole Police Department is called to a possible murder or at least an assault. Officer Douglas MacArthur gets to Ramona Street within a minute. He sees a group of people gathered around a horrible crime scene of an unconscious Rena Aguilar on her porch, covered in blood, with her exposed intestines lying on her lap. The officer calls for an ambulance and backup right away. Rena Aguilar was living at Kathy Flannery's home. Even in the 80s, Bay Area housing was expensive, albeit not as expensive as today, but I digress. They were roommates, and Rena paid rent to Kathy in part cash and the rest through a babysitting arrangement. Kathy had two small children, and Rena would babysit them along with her own 18-month-old son. As soon as Officer MacArthur hears about the baby, he goes inside the house where he finds Rena's crying baby on the floor. He rescues the baby and arranges for a relative of Rena's to come and take the baby. I can't imagine how many officers and firefighters save babies on a daily basis. It cannot be an easy job. If anyone out there is listening and you're in law enforcement, may you know that you have my deepest respects. You are angels on this earth, and you do not get enough credit for risking you and your family's lives for the Bay Area and everywhere else in the world. Officer MacArthur notices blood splatter all over the living room and living room walls, kitchen, and sink. He also instructs everyone who does not live at the home to leave, as it is a crime scene and should be treated as such. Everyone, including Kathy Flannery and her two children, leave. Detective Peter Janke of the Pinole Police Homicide Department is called at 12:45 a.m. The dispatcher, Terry Krieger, gives the detective a rundown of everything she knows so far. An 18-year-old woman named Rena Aguilar was badly injured in her home. She is at the hospital being treated for her wounds. Officer MacArthur found the woman's baby Officer Hodge is in pursuit through San Pablo of the van in question. Officer Hodge reports the van stops at Merritt Avenue and two men run into a house. They also find Rena's black Dodge parked a couple of blocks away. Upon further investigation, they find a heavy trail of blood leading from the living room stand where a landline telephone appears to be missing. The trail of blood leads to the kitchen. The kitchen sink is also a bloody mess. On April 30th of 1980 at 2:08 a.m., Rena Aguilar is pronounced dead at a Richmond hospital. When I read this, I could not understand why she was taken to a hospital 40 miles away from her home. Detective Janke gets in contact with Kathy Flannery, the woman who shared the home with Rena. Kathy is staying at a family member's house and says the last time she saw Rena alive was earlier that evening, arguing with her boyfriend at the house. Kathy adds that Rena and her baby later left the house, and shortly after that, she herself and the kids leave as well. Kathy gets home later that night to neighbors telling her something was wrong. She walks inside her home and sees blood in the living room and kitchen. That's all she knew. The detective asks her if she thought the boyfriend had murdered Rena, and Kathy says she does not know. While questioning Kathy, the detective gets information about a man named James Richard Odell. When asked about him, Kathy says that he had known James for the past 10 years, considers him a good friend, and the last time he saw him was 2 days ago on Sunday, where he tells her that he was moving out of the Bay Area to Oregon, and mentions the van parked outside her house would be just perfect for his trip. The next morning, Rena's boyfriend goes to the Pinole police station, where he is arrested under suspicion of murder. Detective Janke reads him his Miranda rights and is interrogated. He admits to detective that yes, he and Rena that evening he was there with Rena that evening, and yes, they did get into an argument, like most couples do, but after the dispute, he left the house, and he was not one of the two men seen at Rena and Kathy's house that evening between 11 p.m. and midnight. He takes a lie detector test, passes with flying colors, and is released. Detective Janke talks to Kathy for a second time, and she tells them that maybe James had stolen the van that was parked outside her house. What makes her think this is because supposedly when James was over on Sunday, he heard him tell Rena that the van was his, planned to paint it, change the license plates, and drive it to Oregon. Kathy also mentions that Rena was thinking about telling the police about this master plan. On the day of Rena's murder, Kathy said she was feeling sick. After Rena left the house, Kathy called her mom and went to the Kaiser in Oakland, about 16 miles away from her home. When she returned, that's when she saw the police and neighbors at her door, and that's how she found out what happened to Rena. At this point, on the same day, the police had impounded the van in question and searched it. They found a handbag, empty beer cans, and a 12-inch iron pipe. The van inside was covered with blood splatter, especially in the back, where they find a pile of bloody paper towels and rags under a bloody blue blanket. Go to part 2, please.